Alright, that checks out. Alright, let's get it started, huh? Good afternoon, everybody. 你好，普凡. Pencil time, right? Let's get that over a little bit. So this is going to be around wolf-sized. Yeah, usually let me know if there's any questions or comments. I don't mind talking while working. Good afternoon, everybody. ground line on this orthographic laid out. Good afternoon. Alright, let's see if I can pick a different color to put on top of this. That looks pretty well. What do we got? Green, brown, black, terracotta. Maybe I'll see some ink in it. Bring the brightness down on that a little bit. There we go. Nope. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I appreciate that. Thanks for coming in. See how our ink is today. Hope I had that. There you are. I need to get a blotter page. I think that would be helpful. Let's see. Piece of paper. Embossment. Piece of paper. There we go. Let's see, something's up with that tip. Guess it's time for a fresh one. Good thing I ordered some more. I've been getting through these pretty quick. Bring up some of these to kind of help me out a little bit, just to have some reference. There we go, these guys. Got that one. And I want to get a new one of these out to try. Oops, sorry about that. I want to try out these Sumi brushes I haven't used yet. Alright, that feels pretty good. I'm going to slow down some of my processes here a little bit. Where'd the ink go? Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. everybody popping in. Just finished filling this page up with these sketches, so now we're going through and doing some inking on them. Good afternoon. Alright. Some music, huh? For now. Boogie Wonderland? Or is this me bumping into something? Oh, that's it? Alright. That's all you got? Oh, well, you know, you got to work on your repertoire. You're never gonna make it in stand-up if you don't, right? You gotta have your set ready to go. And you gotta, you know, every opportunity you gotta get it going. I'm putting together what's called a palette of predators. So this is part of my little bramble project, and I was looking at my production list, and I was like, I need some more critters, so I thought I'd do a page or two, depending on how much time I have left. That this afternoon. And I thought about doing it on the computer, and I was like, I have to hate looking at the computer these days, so. Or even my iPad. I thought I'd do at least a page of this on all traditional. And maybe shift over to the iPad or something. I need to look at the updates to Infinite Painter, which is an app that I use quite a bit. Yeah, been feeling that way for a while. Well, you know, a long time, but lately it's more of a I hate looking at the computer attitude rather than you know, this or that would be good or better than. I think part of it's all the discussions I hear around AI nonsense. Where people seem to think, among other things, that more ideas is better ideas, or more efficiently produced images is more ideas, or something like that. And I don't find that to have ever been true. Somehow having a greater volume is going to increase your probability of having a thought. that's worthwhile. I think most thoughts that are worth having come slow. So I don't think it's much an issue of fear as it is. I think the expression I came recently is I believe AI is the peak expression of Dunning-Kruger. I don't know if you're familiar with Dunning-Kruger or not, but it's basically this psychological manifestation where we think we're a lot better at something than we actually are, or smarter, and so we kind of act with confidence even if we're not very good at it. So for example, we've done surveys and they tend to find that Americans tend to think that they're on average better at math, which is false. So if you look at our math scores, you compare them with other people, and they're not very good. There's good reasons for that, having to do with the type of education system we've adopted out here. But and then the opposite effect of the Dunning-Kruger effect is that people don't think they're as good at things as they are. So one half of these effects makes you more willing to learn, and the other half, well, you're not as confident about things, so maybe you're not as willing to try things. You are willing to learn because you don't feel like you're as good at something as you should be or could be or are. And then the positive side of the American one, where they think they're better at something, is they are willing to go out and try out things to a certain degree with confidence, even if their likelihood of success is lower. So that's Dunning-Kruger. So I think with AI, it makes people feel like they're doing something, like they're being productive. It's like having a checklist. You feel like you're producing something, even if your checklist isn't very good. I made a checklist today. This was on it. So that's Dunning-Kruger. But I was thinking about it because I was listening to some people talk about the good and bad of what they perceive to be the good and bad of AI image making, or machine learning image making, since it's not actually AI. But I think it makes people feel like they're doing something when they are in fact not. You're from Poland. Cześć! I'm 1/4 Lithuanian. Aš kalbu lietuviškai, bet lenkiškai nešneku. I've been to Warsaw, Warszawa, once a long time ago. And I have a book of art by an artist named Krzyżanowski from Poland. I like to think of him as a Polish John Singer Sargent, kind of similar brushwork styles. I do speak Russian too, but I was at the Gallery of Art. There's a painting there that I still remember It's by Krzyzanowski, which is why I picked up his book about him, which I can sort of half read because I do speak and read Russian as well. But there's a painting of a smiling woman. And I've never seen like at that point I'd never seen a painting where someone smiled in a painting and it looked natural. It didn't look forced or staged, like it was a very natural expression on her face. It's a big smile too. I assume it's in the National Gallery there. And my family, the town that they were from when they left Lithuania, a little over 100 years ago, was Punskas, Lithuania, which is now inside of Poland a few kilometers. I think it's just called Punsk. Punsk. Very small town. There's actually a famous art critic whose family came from there too. Simon Schama. Though I think most of his relatives were killed during World War II, because that was a Jewish family. And Lithuanians, I don't know about Poland, but Lithuanians were very helpful with the Nazis when they were there, because they were more afraid of Russia, and so they wanted to support the Germans when they came in, because they saw them as protecting them from Russia. Well, have a good evening, I guess, right? Good afternoon, everybody. I should check and see if the how the focus looks from the overhead camera, huh? Alright, let's see. Where's it gonna show up? I'm gonna make that visible to myself. I mean, it looks pretty good, as far as I can tell. Hopefully I didn't just mess it up. I feel like it's pretty good. Yeah, it feels pretty good. Alright. Just checking my overhead camera. Make sure it's working okay. Good afternoon. Get ink over here now. Oh, oops. Come on, don't make a mess. Ugh. Good afternoon. Yeah, he's a chunky boy. Trying out some different sizes on things. Well, I'm glad somebody likes it. So my dog doesn't even care. He's just sleeping over there. He's ambivalent to this stuff. Well, cats are worse. They just get in your way. That's how much they hate what you're doing. Oh. She has to jump up and put her butt in your face all the time. I like cats, but I am allergic to them, so it's dogs for me. Helps me get outside at least a couple times a day. Our animals are very good about their schedules. They have really good internal clocks. Oh, I guess I'm over here now, huh? Up and down. Close enough. I just try out some different shapes, so I get past a few, I start to get a little crazy with them. Or this guy right here, yeah, he's kind of funny. Gave him like a monkey screaming face. She made me think of the rat people from rat creatures from Bone. I did a little sketch of him. Didn't give him the bug out eyes, but the elephant skulls are lumpy. I've been on a self kind of study improvement kick this last, I guess, school year. Looking at what my students are interested in, and the kind of things I'll be teaching for the most part. And so I've been taking my own advice on self-study, which is you take the books that you have that are like instruction books, especially. Lots of other ones will do too, but instruction ones are really helpful. And you read and copy the drawings or do the exercises in them. So I have a cheap music stand down in front of my couch. And so the last book I just finished was Hugh Leidman's book on animal drawing. I'm currently in the Weatherly Guide to Drawing Animals. Yeah, so I've kind of made a concerted effort to do that with some different books. Those are just the most recent ones. Finally did the copies of Bridgman I've been meaning to do. I finished up, what's the guy's name? Another book on figure drawing. I actually started doing it a couple of years ago, but then never got around to finishing it. Among others, so the Matteo Meister books. So I did these 2 framed ink books. Oh, and Hans Bacher, his book on composition. So those are the books that I've been looking at pretty intensely this year. Looking for things I can bring to my students. And, things that I can improve in myself. Give myself another year and I'll probably run out of books. There we go. Yeah, the Matteo Meister books are really fantastic. Framed Ink and Framed Ink 2. He's got another one's on Framed Ink and Perspective and one on drawing. I actually want to incorporate a lot of those drawing exercises I see in there. I've seen them other places too, like in the some of those Super Annie books. There's the Han guy and another one on perspective drawing. I want to kind of incorporate some of that into the course material. But definitely, I highly recommend those framed ink books, because there's a lot of really great compositional stuff. Stuff I was actually teaching before I read them, but he's got a great way of explaining what he does in context of lenses and thinking through the eye of the camera, which isn't the only way to do illustration, but I think it's definitely helpful. Yeah, all there's 5 of them, and they're all really good. So the first one, framed ink, is generally about composition and perspective and thinking about the lens when you're designing compositions. The second one, framed ink 2, is similar, but it's more like about how you weight space for composition, so it's more specific. And then the framed ink perspective, first one's all about just regular perspective drawing, some of the more kind of detailed aspects of it, which I've taught for a long time, like how to actually do perspective. And then the second one is also about perspective, but it's more about, drawing out of your head, and especially relating to like aligning anatomical features on figures and things like that. So it's also really great. It's like figure structure and how that works with perspective and all that. And then the framed ink drawing book is kind of drawing techniques. So ways to work with pencils, pens, and the digital brushes, kind of draw more directly and clearly and expressively. So I definitely always recommend them. The ones I like to bring in books to show my students, and so his always make it on that stack. Does have a YouTube channel. It's pretty small. It's mostly just him talking about his book. He did post a video recently of like sketching a figure in 3-point perspective and how you kind of think about it. Which I haven't watched yet. So I can see what he's doing from his thumbnail. Well, if you really want to dive deep into perspective, there's always my teaching site. I walk you through, speaking of selling yourself, walk you through projects on how to do it. It's not just lining things up, it's like how you actually draw space and perspective. Like one of the courses I have on there is intensive 2-point perspective class, and doesn't actually cover all the stuff, but it covers enough to do a certain project. There's one that does cover pretty much all the stuff there, but this one is one I made for my students at Ringling, and they had to measure their bedroom and draw it from the outside. So that there's techniques, and I show how to do it in the course, where you can perfectly replicate measurements in perspective. And so they had to do that for that class, was to redraw their own room in perspective. That's all over at myartprofessor.com. But yeah, it does take a lot of work. But I found, learning perspective, one of the things I've seen, even learning the more basic kind where you just line things up. Yeah, so that was my perspective training when I was a student, is they sat us down in the hallway, you put a vanishing point in the middle, and you make sure everything goes to that vanishing point. And it's not really very much. So that's what I got too. I didn't really understand perspective like I do now until after I had to go through some self-training to just figure it out. I had a few videos, and I've kind of sifted through a lot of books that contain parts of this and part of that, to kind of put it all together in the course. But that was similar when I was a freshman. So they sat us down in the hallway and we lined everything up and did a drawing all week, or for a couple of weeks or whatever during the semester. And you learn to line things up with that one vanishing point. And I learned a lot of good stuff from that teacher, but that perspective was not one of them. And of course, no education system is going to be perfect, but you only have so much time, and the teacher has to decide what's more important based off of what they know and what they do, and so for him it wasn't nearly as important. And none of my students walk away from my class thinking it's a joke. I usually walk out relieved. Or exhausted. That's how I like to say. So some teachers, they go for inspiration and insightful. I go for exhausted. Got this long boy right there. Yeah, I've seen that before. Like when I worked for SCAD, Hispanic College of Art and Design, in Hong Kong, I had to sit in on other professors' classes once in a while, and there was one in particular. I sat in on this person's class, and I had no idea what was going on. I know what the subject of the class was. It was scientific illustration or something like that. It was pretty clear he had no idea what he was doing. And the students were all looking at me because it was a small school, so I knew most of the students in there. And they were looking at me like, see how bad this is? Because a lot of them complained to me about this particular professor. I didn't have any power over him, but they wanted me to go back to teaching the kinds of classes he was teaching at the time, and I didn't want to do that then. I was focusing more on the painting classes and my own painting rather than illustration. Yeah, it was the first time that happened was there, and there was the whole class basically came up to me. I was teaching a figure drawing class, and they were telling me how bad he was, and they were demanding that I go back and teach those subjects. And I told them, of course they should put their complaints in the teacher feedback. But didn't happen. Well, they did probably, and it didn't matter. I think some of the students must have compared him to me because that guy started to really hate me after a while. I never said anything bad about him to anyone. It's a professional courtesy. But it was clear he didn't like me for some reason. Yeah, there was a teacher recently. He was telling me that he was talking about like things we need to know for our classes, and he didn't seem to think he needed to know all the software his students were using in a class he was teaching, which I was very confused by. Could be, I don't know. I didn't dig too deep because I just generally avoided the guy. I didn't want to. After a while, it just got tiresome, so I just avoided him. But he was just saying like he didn't feel obligated to know a certain software or whatever his students were using. I guess it depends on the context of the class, depending on if the students are using it for themselves and it's not part of the general course. But I always feel like I have an obligation to know my subject matter, whatever it is I'm teaching, pretty well. At least better than students. I always like to tell people like they're qualified to teach a class if they're 10% better than the students are, at least. So at least have something to teach. And for most times the students doesn't take a lot to be, better than they are at something. Just because they're new. But I always think that the first rule of teaching is to know thy shit. So you should know your subject matter really, really well. And people pick up on it when you don't. Yeah, I've never been able to figure out people that treat each other like that, because I don't do that, at least as far as I know. I'll certainly tease people, but I'm not the kind that's gonna be rude to someone just because I don't like them, especially if I'm working with them. Unless they're causing a significant problem. That's been very, very rare. a little bit of a problem I dealt with my last school, where there was a department head who seemed to think this person knew a lot more than they did, and it was pretty clear they didn't know. Especially when I never really looked into the person's history until they were causing a problem, into who they were. So I just figure, when they hire people, they're going to be good at their jobs. And as this person kind of started creating problems for me, I was like, well, who is this person? What do they? Maybe they've got some kind of experience or insight that I don't have about something. So I looked into this person's history, and turned out they're not an artist, not a visual artist anyway. They were in charge of the entire first year program at this school. It's an art school. And I was completely flabbergasted by discovering this. Like, there's literally hundreds and hundreds, nearly 1,000 artists teaching at this school, and you couldn't get one of them, like any of them that are actual visual artists, to run this program. And so we had this one person who was not a visual artist, and she's trying to tell us how to teach these classes to a certain degree. And so it was the only time I felt like I've ever was like negative about a person. But she was trying to get me to change course content, or the way I was teaching things, when I could show her the effects of what it did for students. There was a lot of really good student work coming out of the classes, and but she'd been at the school a long time, teaching not art classes so much, and so she knew a lot of people in the upper admin, which is why she was doing the job she was doing. Really, her job was just supposed to facilitate ours. Like, she wasn't supposed to intervene in our classes, as far as I understood. And so what they call the Peter principle, I think, is well, I understand why. I think it's wrong, and it's not the way I think, the way that they do things. So I'd like to say I don't understand why, but I do understand very well quite why the person was hired. But doesn't mean I think it's right, but I do know why. It had to do with just having a lot of friends and the right spots for it. But I'm not there anymore, so I don't have to worry about it. But it was just such a bizarre experience. One of the teachers I was working with there, he kind of took over my classes, and he just quit too. He's moved on to another school. But he always had something really funny to say about her when you'd have meetings. He would let me know kind of what was going on. So, drama, but, It's always good. That's why it's always good to cultivate options too. So, it's like I recognize, that she wasn't the kind of person I could change, and so I learned to kind of just say no. And when the opportunity came for something seems much better anyway, I took it for sure. Yeah, the Peter principle is it's not for me. It's just a principle about how things work. Basically, it's the idea that you fail up to your level of incompetence, and it's why people fail forward the way that they do. People who are really good at something, they get hired into something new, and they're not as competent at that new thing. So maybe they were really good at the job that was just below it, but because of that, how good they were at the other thing, they get raised up to this new level. But it turns out that level is just where they happen to become incompetent, either through lack of experience or lack of talent. But they're really good at the lower thing, so people are surprised when they're not as good at the upper thing. But really what it is they've just risen to that level where they're no longer as capable at something. It's the Peter principle. I think it's based off the Christian saint, Saint Peter. Since he kind of became the leader of the Christians after the martyrdom of Jesus. And so you can kind of tell that maybe there are people that didn't like his style as much as the last guys. It's not a hard thing to understand. It's just basically, it's like if you ever gotten into a new job where you're feeling really confident in what you were doing before, and suddenly you're in a new position, but you're not quite as good at it, or you're maybe even terrible at it. And reasons because you've risen to your level of incompetence, and maybe you'll never be good at it, depending on what it is. I always wonder, it makes me wonder where my level of incompetence is at. What's the thing that I'm just never going to be good at? So typically with the Peter principle thing, is you get put in that spot. So if you have like a military person, they rise up in the ranks, so maybe they were a really good lieutenant, but they become a captain and they're just not as good at that, not as dealing with as many people, or the upper levels of command, or the kinds of responsibilities that they have that are different. So, everyone's got their level, right? It's like, I look at American politicians from any political party, And they seem to think of themselves as being these elite people, and I'm like, well, usually if you think of elites, you think of impressive people, and none of these people are very impressive. Maybe a small number of exceptions. There's other people maybe you think that about, but maybe they are actually really good at what they do. You just don't understand what they're doing. There was a famous, relatively speaking, economist, Milton Friedman, and he said the thing with politicians, he says, you have to realize, he says, they're not trying to solve your problems, they're busy trying to solve their own problems. And as soon as you kind of recognize that, then it makes a lot more sense about what they're trying to do. Because they got their own problems. They don't want to deal with your problems, They're trying to figure out how to get reelected, how to keep people happy, how to please their friends or the people that support them. That ain't you. Even if you're voting for them. But I thought that was a very thoughtful statement. Alright, let's see. Let's get some underlines on these guys. I was actually very excited to find this brush I'm using. It's a Kolinsky Sable brush, and they're a little bit expensive to get right now because they come from mostly from one country in the world, which is Russia. And so the United States has sanctions on a lot of products from Russia. Especially things like this, And so to get these brushes now, I think they're, this brush I'm using right now, if I wanted to buy a new one, it's probably $40 or $50 US. And when I bought it was probably 20. They're not cheap brushes. I've tried using the synthetic types, but they just don't work the same in spite of the branding. So I found a few of these I'd bought a long time ago. Yeah, so they need to finish up the whatever's going on with this whole Ukraine nonsense soon so I can get my brushes. Either way, it'll be okay as long as I get my brushes. Yeah, so the sooner they get that resolved, the easier it'll be for me to get my brushes again. Like the company that I bought this from, they don't even make them anymore. So it's Trekell, which is they're a really good brush company. But alright, let's put the date on this and start another one. Gotta make sure I put the dates on these, otherwise I forget when I do things. Alright. One page down. I'm going to try a different colored pencil. Yeah, so I've got all these supplies, like these color pencils, and there's so many of them I haven't even used up, so I'm trying to actively go through my art supplies. Yeah, Trekell, they're a small company. The most famous one for that type of brush is it's Winsor Newton's. I think it's Series 7, and that's the one that like all the comic book people use. Is that Series 7 brush? Let's put that back to the middle. Like they're not, you know, like I said, typically even in regular situations they're not cheap, but I feel like all the really good comic book people, they use the Winsor Newton Series 7, which I believe is a British brand. But I think you can, the brushes, the hair also comes from China, but it may just be like a general, you know, U.S. Biden administration restriction. Sables are, you know, they're cute animals, and so they tend to be favored for protection by certain groups. Sable's basically kind of like a ferret as an animal. And then the fur comes from its tail. I'm not sure how they harvest it, but I'm sure they use the rest of the animal for making coats or whatever other things they do with the furry critters. But the Trekell ones, they're the same quality as the Winsor Newton ones, but just they were usually cheaper. How much time we got? About half an hour. Yeah, the synthetic ones they're just not good. And then people think in terms of the environmental stuff. Well, the synthetic ones are made out of petroleum, plastic. So I guess at least the sables are a relatively renewable resource, I guess. Yeah, I've often seen people they'll claim they've got some new synthetic brush that's really really great, and I try it and it's never very good. Or if you're using synthetics with they last a lot, especially if you take good care of them. Like you can after you're done cleaning your brushes, you can put natural hair ones. You can add hair conditioner to them, and that'll help them last even longer. Just rub some in and shape the brush, and you can get a brush that'll last even longer. Which isn't something people normally think about, but it's definitely really good for the natural hair brushes. Um, I got from a painter friend of mine. Yes, there's different ways of looking at things. Yeah, yeah, hair conditioner. Just like you use with your. I don't really use hair conditioner all that much because I keep my hair pretty short. But I keep like a little traveler's bottle with my paint brushes, my paint soap, so I can just dip the brush in that, and that lasts years. Little traveler. Yeah, but it makes sense. Yeah, you think about it. It's good for the hair, right? Brings back the springiness and the life, especially if you're using oil paints and you're dipping them in the solvents, the turpentine, to clean them with initially. Um, but yeah, I'm a good boy about doing my brush cleaning with water media. I do that too. But I've got it's like a brush cleaning soap. I've got a big tub that I've been using for a long time. Yeah, anything that'll break it up is good. I guess I'll draw it over there, huh? Ah. Yeah, when I was in Madrid a long, long time ago, 7-ish plus years ago, I got really, really sick, like when I first arrived. And there was some cold medicine I got at pharmacy, and I've never been able to. I don't remember what it was called, but it was really, really good. It was like these kind of I don't know, 1.5 centimeter wide kind of tablets. But it made me feel much better really, really quickly. But I don't remember what it was called. because I've never seen it anywhere other than there. But it might be other countries too. I just didn't see it because I didn't get sick. Well, I was sick in Milan once too. But, then the internet sucked in the Airbnb I was in, so I complained about it because I was stuck inside being sick most of the time I was there. I wouldn't be surprised if I still got the box left somewhere. I think it was like one pill left. It wasn't Panadol because I could get that in Hong Kong, just similar to Tylenol or whatever. Ah. Paracetamol? No, maybe. I don't remember at all what the name sounded like. Estonia. Ragama esticalt. Ragama esticalt. Ragama venicalt. Terravist? Terra? Ah. Ah. Yeah, it gets the ice is slippery in Estonia. It gets cold. They get the white nights in the summer and the black days in the winter. There. Yeah. When I lived there, it was a very long time ago in the '90s, in Tartu, for a little while. I remember watching the sun rise and set in the south, in a few minutes or less, and then like the next day it didn't rise at all. There was just a little bit of a glow on the southern horizon. Yeah. So in the summer though, the sun there's a few days or a day at least in Estonia, Lithuania as well, but other countries out there, but where the sun doesn't go down. So it's 2 a.m. and there's bright sunshine outside. That's why everybody has such heavy drapes on windows there. Is the they're trying to keep the sun out in the summertime. It's very weird, waking up in the middle of the night and your whole room is just filled with light, and it's 2 a.m. or midnight or 3 a.m. or whatever. That was one of the weird things about living in Hong Kong, is you didn't notice the amount of day change very much because it was so close to the equator. Changes a little bit, I think, about a half an hour or so when I lived there. but nothing really that noticeable. I've the last 4 years or a year ago, anyway, living in Florida, and it does change a lot more there than it did in Hong Kong, but less than where I'm at now. Yeah, the white nights and the black days. Yeah, unless you live in Alaska, you won't know anything about it. That's actually one of the interesting things. Is most of Europe is north of the United States, so even the Italy and Spain and Georgia, not Georgia, but Italy and Spain and Greece. That's what I was thinking. Greece. They're all lined up with like the northern side of the United States, but because of the Mediterranean Sea, it's much warmer there. You just like look at it on a globe. All those countries are like to the north side of the United States. But it's you don't think about it that way just because the weather isn't quite like that, but you would expect. But Lithuania and Estonia and those countries, they're even further north than most of Europe. Where you get into places like Norway or Sweden or whatever, and they're even further north, and the effect is much more dramatic. Dramatic, so there's a higher contrast, so the effect is less dramatic. For them it's more dramatic, because if they were to go north, it's they're used to their days being almost the same all the year round, whereas if they suddenly go to Norway in the winter or in the summer, they're going to see that dramatic contrast from where they're from. Plugged in. There's the power. There it goes. Good afternoon, everybody. Popping. I'll probably be on for about another 8 or 9 minutes. Then it's time to take the dog out for his WALK, which I'm sure he is thinking about right now while he's sleeping over there. behind me gets to be a little bit longer, he'll get up and start reminding me about what time it is. Because he knows exactly what time it is. He's a very good clock boy. Yeah, I figure they're kind of works like a what are those things called? Hourglasses. So his bladder's basically an hourglass, so when it fills up, it's time to go. And they get pretty good about, timing those kinds of things for themselves during the day. Because they don't want to make a mess in their den, right? Yeah, my dog's definitely very punctual. If I'm not up at a certain time in the morning, he will stand on my chest until I do, get up. Yeah, they know exactly what time certain things are supposed to happen. Actually, he's been a little bit off schedule today because I woke up early. And so he thought it was a certain time for his SNACK for lunchtime that he gets, except it was an hour early. And he didn't realize that was not going to happen just yet. Yeah, my dog sleeps next to me. Actually, a result of our very first night. He was still a puppy when I got him. I didn't realize that. I thought he was a little bit older than he was. But he seemed young, but he was fully grown. Didn't have puppy feet anymore. They told me he was a year older than he actually was at the pound. But he got him his little bed, and he was laying on it. And then I went to bed, and he just kind of walked over and looked at me with these very sad eyes, very confused about what's going on with his life, because he doesn't have any control over it, and he really wanted to come lay down. So ever since then, sleeps next to me. He's not that big, so it's not a big deal. Yeah, the dog cam's working now. I figured out what was up with that. Turned out there wasn't enough power getting to the cameras, so that's why they were glitching out on me in the past. Now they get enough juice, so. Yeah, he's probably a little big. Thick fur. Yeah, mine, he's just a little guy, so relatively speaking. Yeah, the thing with dogs, especially cats, are a little bit different. They have different psychology, but dogs are social animals. They're pack animals, and so pack is basically a family. And so when they're with their people, they see them as their family. And so it's very weird for them to not eat with the family, and they get used to it, but probably doesn't feel very good that they don't get to do all the things that everybody else clearly gets to do, just because they're the dog. And cats aren't quite domesticated the same way dogs are, so they're a bit their own different kind of animal. Yeah, they're very dependent on things they are familiar with. So first thing, if you go to a new place with a cat, they'll often spend a lot of time hiding, and they'll also thoroughly investigate the space. So they'll look at every corner, they'll figure out everything about it before they're at all comfortable with it. So they'll know all the hiding spots and all the smells and everything before they can really relax. So you have to let a cat kind of do its own things for a few days before it'll be at all comfortable. Might even disappear for a while it's figuring out what's going on. We had a bird that was kind of like that. It was a cockatiel that my dad found in a tree, of all places. Must have gotten out of somebody's house or pet store or something like that. It was sitting in a tree. Put up his hand and he brought it home. It was just a baby. It was wasn't very old. It was pretty young. And loved him like nothing else. But hated all women, like my mom, and everybody was really jealous of my mom. My mom was the one that mostly took care of it too, which was kind of funny. But But it definitely loved my dad more than anybody. Yeah, mine. This one actually hated my mother. So it was it hated all women. Like wouldn't let women touch it or play with it or hang out with it. It was totally okay with guys. It was a female bird too, which is pretty unusual. Usually it's a lot of animals like they hate other men most of the things because the voice is so much different. So it kind of scares. That's usually the case with pets is they'll like the women. It's like my mom has this golden retriever, and it took a long time for it to decide that I was okay. And it's generally that case for all men with this dog. Like she's afraid of men. And takes her a while to kind of get used to men around the house. Alright, well I finished off that row. It is 5:03, so I better stop before I miss someone's important moment. But thanks to everybody that came in, and I'll probably be back later working on the computer, trying to bring that thing to a finish.